This is the BBC World Service, and on our website you can explore more of our programmes from documentary to science. Listen and download at any time by going to bbcworldservice.com. On air, online and on smartphones, this is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Welcome to News Hour from the BBC World Service. I'm Julian Marshall. Ukraine says Russian forces have bombed a maternity and children's hospital in the southern port city of Mariupol.
One of the bomb is in the middle of children's hospital. All windows blown up because very powerful bomb.
The British ambassador to Ukraine, now in Poland, tells us the Russian invasion is a horror show. What progress have Russian forces made over the past 2 weeks? And we'll speak to a former advisor to President Putin. What would it take for the Russian leader to call off the assault? Also in Antarctica, scientists have found one of the greatest ever undiscovered shipwrecks more than 100 years after it sank.
It is in a magnificent shape, the gold lettering of Endurance today. When we saw that, it was emotional. People were hugging and shouting. Everything was great, but
that's all after the latest news.
BBC News with Amy Gallery. Ukraine has accused Russia of bombing a maternity and children's hospital in the besieged city of Mariupol. President Volodymyr Zelensky called it an atrocity. A regional governor said 17 people had been hurt. More details from our chief international correspondent, Lisa Saad, in Kyiv.
The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has leveled this accusation against Russia, saying it was a deliberate strike and that women and children are buried under the wreckage. We still are trying to establish whether or not or how many children were in the hospital at the time. The images are very distressing. A whole section of the hospital is now a charred shell. We saw rooms turned topsy-turvy, windows shattered, walls smashed, children's furniture turned upside down. If it was a deliberate strike, that is a war crime.
A short time earlier, the Russian Foreign Ministry said Ukrainian fighters had moved staff and patients out of the hospital and set up firing positions there. There have been further setbacks in efforts to evacuate civilians from other areas under attack by Russia, despite an agreement to have a 12-hour ceasefire. Ukrainian officials accused Russian troops of shelling the eastern town of Izium, stopping buses from leaving. The Russian government has admitted that conscripts have been used in the invasion of Ukraine, despite a promise by President Putin that only professional soldiers would take part. And the defense ministry said some of them had been captured. From Moscow, Jenny Hill.
It feels as though it's getting harder for the Kremlin to maintain that everything is going according to plan, which of course is what they have been insisting about their so-called special military operation in Ukraine. Just a few days ago, they had to admit that Russian soldiers are dying as part of this mission. And then today, the Defense Ministry admitted that young conscripts have been sent in. And the Kremlin is seeking to keep control over what's happening because a lot of Russians watch state television. They are being told that the Kremlin has everything under control.
Western officials say they're very concerned about the possibility of Russia using non-conventional weapons in the ongoing invasion of Ukraine. The term is used to cover a variety of biological and nuclear devices, but it's understood the officials are referring to chemical warfare. Our security correspondent is Gordon Carrera.
Really refers to chemical weapons. They're not saying it's definitely going to be used, but they are clearly expressing a kind of growing concern about it. The evidence for that, they pointed to the fact it had been used before in conflicts Russia had been involved in, notably Syria, of course. Also, the fact that there have been some kinds of disinformation and claims coming from Russia, potentially, in their words, setting the scene for what they call false possibility.
BBC News. South Korea's presidential election has been narrowly won by the conservative opposition leader Yoon Suk-yeol. In one of the tightest races in the country's recent history, he beat the governing Democratic Party candidate Lee Jae-myung by less than 1 percentage point. Laura Bicker reports from Seoul.
Yoon Suk-yeol only entered politics last year and rose to prominence for successfully prosecuting the former Conservative President Park Geun-hye on bribery and corruption charges.
His victory marks the end of a bitterly divided contest with his liberal rival. He's pledged to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and blamed the rise of feminism for the country's low birth rate. Mr. Yoon is also more hawkish on foreign policy than the current leader Moon Jae-in.
One of Brazil's best-known musicians, Caetano Veloso, is leading a protest outside Congress in Brasilia against planned laws which he says would cause widespread environmental destruction. The bills would, among other things, open the way to mining on indigenous land. The draft legislation is backed by President Jair Bolsonaro. During his time in office, deforestation of the Amazon has accelerated sharply.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan
Said he believes the visit to Turkey by his Israeli counterpart, Isaac Herzog, marks a turning point in relations between the two countries after a decade of tension.
Relations have been strained since 2010 when Israeli commandos killed 10 Turkish activists
Heading by boat to Gaza. President Herzog says mutual respect would allow the countries to deal with shared challenges. A critically endangered species of bat has been discovered in Rwanda's Nyungwe forest after last being sighted 40 years ago. The pair of Hill's horseshoe bats were first found in a cave in 2019, but it took 3 years to verify the species. BBC News.
Hello, welcome to News Hour from the BBC World Service, coming to you live from our studios in central London. I'm Julian Marshall. And we begin our coverage of Ukraine today in the southern port city of Mariupol, where, according to the government, a maternity and children's hospital has been bombed by the Russians, with reports of deaths and injuries. Images on social media show a huge crater and wrecked buildings. There's meant to be a ceasefire in Mariupol, but it's been relentlessly bombarded since the beginning of the invasion 2 weeks ago. Life for the residents there is already one of extreme privation. According to the deputy mayor, there's no water, electricity or gas, while people are melting snow to drink. The White House has described today's attack on the hospital as barbaric. And earlier, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, said that healthcare providers had increasingly been caught up in attacks in the conflict in Ukraine.
So far, WHO has verified 18 attacks on health facilities, health workers and ambulances, including 10 deaths and 16 injuries. These attacks deprive whole communities of health care. WHO continues to call on the Russian Federation to commit to a peaceful resolution to this crisis.
Well, shortly before we came on air, I spoke to Petro Andreshchenko, who's an advisor to the mayor of Mariupol. He left the city last night to organize humanitarian corridors and is a few kilometers outside Mariupol.
We had 4 bombs in the center of our historical part of the city, and one of the bombs is in the middle of children's hospital. All windows blown up because very, very powerful bomb. We used this hospital like hospital for children, and our children in this hospital stayed all day long. And near the second building in this hospital when our children born.
Were there casualties?
For now, we found 17 hurted women. For lucky, 18 children that we work because we will know all the real picture with this destroying with our people with killed and hurted just in the morning.
So for the moment you know that 17 women have been injured, but you don't know the full scale of the casualties.
Yeah.
Are there any military targets close to the hospital?
It's absolutely civilian part of the city. We haven't any military, any forces near these buildings and near our civilian structure.
And there's meant to be a ceasefire in Mariupol at the moment, is that right?
The Mariupol is under the fire I don't know, minute by minute now. It's terrible. Our buildings are destroyed. Our streets are destroyed. We have fire around. And we can't do anything with this problem. We haven't electricity, we haven't water, we haven't heat. It's a catastrophe.
Is anybody able to leave the city? Is anybody able
Anyone?
to get out?
Nobody. No one. Because the Russian controlled all our roads for exit from the city. And if the civilian people try to exit, they start to attack, start the fire from fire guns. So our people really stayed inside the city like hostage. As I know, our government tried to talk to Russian government, and day by day they promised to stop fire and give us a humanity corridor. But it's absolutely lie. Day by day they lie and kill us.
Petro Androshenko, advisor to the mayor.